How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology here with AmyJo Gleason. We are going to be talking about the North and South Node moving into Cancer and Capricorn. So, hi, AmyJo. How are you?
I'm good, Cam. How are you doing?
I am excited now that we're talking about this and finally doing this. So, you want to introduce yourself or tell us a little bit about you? I don't know if any of my followers on YouTube know who you are or anything.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm AmyJo Gleason. I go by Joe. All my friends call me Joe. I'm an astrologer based in Oklahoma City. I'm a freelance writer and I do some graphic design for other astrologers as well, now and again. And I'm the vice president of the Association for Young Astrologers. So you
Join
might
it.
know me from that. Huh? What? Join? Yeah, join us, one of us. Um, yeah, exactly. It's a great organization. Anyways, that's pretty much what I do. And that's what I'm about.
And you're also an amazing astrologer, and that's why I'm having you on here today to talk about this. And I mean, the reason I really want to talk to you about it is just because you have such a Cancerian vibe to you, and I feel like you are probably going to be the best person to really elaborate more on where to be going with North Node in Cancer, where to be really realizing with the South Node in Capricorn too. So that's why I brought her on. So today we're really going to just be discussing what are the nodes, what do they symbolize? How does it really show up in life? When are they going to be activated, or in other words, triggered? Major planets that are going to be involved during this. We're going to also be really going into like advice on where to really be going with this, and that's where a lot of this discussion really is going to be going. And then at the end, we'll be talking about the eclipses all the way from 2019 to 2020, and then we'll be done. So I guess let's start going into it. So how would you best describe the nodes? How would you best describe them and what they do?
All right. So I guess first of all, it's important to note that the nodes aren't actual physical bodies. So we have the planets, right? Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, all those things. There's actually like physical things out in space. The nodes are mathematical calculations. They are just where the sun's orbit and the moon's orbit intersect. And so on a technical level, they're not a real thing, but they still hold a lot of weight and they do a lot of things to things in your chart and things in the sky. So as far as interpretively, like what they actually do as they transit and as we experience them here in our real human lives, they're kind of a wild energy. Like they kind of feel like they're not of this world. They kind of import things that are not normal. It's the kind of stuff where like the nodes hit a point in your chart or an eclipse happens or something happens and you're like, whoa, is this my life? Like, is this my life right now? And that's how the nodes feel. It's like, is this your life? Like, is this real? Is it not real? Like, what's happening? So they have that kind of wild, otherworldly, ephemeral feeling that is not necessarily the same as other just normal planets or other normal transits.
Yeah, and it's almost like I always see it as almost as something that it just hits you specifically, even though everyone shares a lot of the same degrees of the North or South Node, but it's like only something specific to you that you would like totally understand, or something that like I'm not super big into it, but the whole like past life stuff, I've seen a lot of that stuff come up with my South Node before, and I'm like, that's kind of weird. And but it's like those otherworldly things. It's not of this world. It's something deeply, I feel like, enrooted with, I like to say, the soul. Like it's kind of like your soul's compass on like where direction to go, and it's kind of like the magnet that takes you to it in a sense.
Really.
So that's what the nodes are. What, as far as symbolically speaking, what do they kind of like show up as, or I guess in your perspective or definition?
So when we talk about the nodes, we're always talking about the North Node and the South Node both, and they act as kind of like polarity points or an axis. And so we should probably talk about like what each one kind of symbolizes by itself and how that relates to the other. So the North Node, probably a lot of your viewers are familiar with this. It symbolizes something we like to call destiny, like what you're being drawn towards, like what your heart wants, like kind of your North Star, what you're supposed to be moving towards, and what you really, really want, or what you're supposed to be here for in this life. what you incarnated for, if you're into the whole reincarnation thing. And the South Node is kind of what you arrived with, what you brought with you, what you know already, what you're good with, the kind of stuff where you're like, yep, got that, you know, I got that on lock. I understand these things. I understand how this works. I'm familiar with it. I'm comfortable with it. And those are the things that you kind of in life end up growing away from in some ways. So you start to see this idea of a polarity between what you came here with, the South Node, what you're familiar with, what you're good at maybe, and what you are growing towards, what you are hungry for, what you are drawn to in a way that you cannot ignore. And that's this polarity, because in reality, you really do need both those things as a human being. You need what you're good at, but you need something to strive for. You need what you're familiar with, but you need that new adventure as well. So the North and South Node really pull us and stretch us in both these directions and give us this perspective that we wouldn't get any other way. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And like what you said about how this is something I feel like can get a little bit confused with, because the South Node is so symbolic of like letting go, not going in that direction anymore. But it's also, you know, what we've came with, or you know, what we've brought with us. But it's like the North Node almost forces us to look at what we've brought with the South Node and forces us to let go of it, you know, release it in order for us to keep striving for that North Node thing. That was a really good definition. I like that. How would you really best explain how does it show up in life? Because I know for me, the North Node is always kind of like, if I'm going to take a chance, if I'm going to make a decision, it's going to be on more of a bigger scale too. It's going to be more the direction of the North Node, wherever it's kind of going, wherever it's, you know, wanting us to, you know, I really like the imagery of the dragon's head for the North Node. It's all consuming. It just wants to keep going and being fed. And the North Node is often, I feel like it's a fuel to a fire that you can have at times, and it's kind of like that's the wind of direction that fire takes, is wherever that's kind of going. How would you kind of I guess explain how it kind of shows up in life in that sense?
well, like I kind of alluded to a second ago, it really is both. A lot of times the South Node, or let's talk about the North Node first, since that's what you brought up. The North Node really is what you hunger towards, and it is kind of that wind beneath your wings. It can really feel like that's the thing. So wherever the North Node is in your chart, both by sign and by house, it can show up that way. Like, let's say you have the North Node in Capricorn. It could really drive you towards that kind of material stability, that responsibility, that duty-oriented stuff where you're like, I am going to be an adult. And it could be that like, and you know, like we all have to deal with that. Sure.
Yeah.
But like, it could be something where like maybe in your past, maybe there's some South Node stuff where like you had to nurture other members of your family, maybe older members of your family who should have been nurturing you. So you have this North Node drive to like compensate and be like, I'm never going to be in that position. I'm never going to put someone in that position. So you have this hunger to create a Capricornian structure where everything works right. Everything works correctly. Everything's set up exactly how it's supposed to be. And you run the show, like, not run the show, like you run the ship. You run a tight ship, right? Where everything works and everything is exactly where it should be, because you understand the importance of that responsibility. And it can become kind of obsessive sometimes in that sort of way with the North Node. The North Node, neither of the nodes are balanced. They're not moderate points. They're very imbalanced. When you find the nodes in practice, you find imbalance a lot of times. That's another thing I see in practice.
Yeah,
sure.
I see a lot of extremes too with that.
Yes.
Now, with what did you just say about the North Node? How it's kind of like a desire. How would you describe the South Node being in like a sense of, you know, because the South, it's almost kind of like it's hard to put the exact words on what it symbolizes. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, yeah, it's your past, it's where you came from, it's what you've brought along with you. But I guess, what does that look like? What does that feel like in a sense? Because I know for me, the South Node has always seemed to be so much of what people can kind of not necessarily look over, kind of gloss over, because it's so natural to them. And it can also be a little bit difficult to find the, it's kind of like when someone is a hoarder, they don't have a problem with holding on to their stuff. It makes sense to them. I feel like that's like the south node for certain, not for certain people, but at times how it can be expressed is like, you don't really understand that maybe you have been through an experience or you have something that you're just not even realizing that you have, or that you've already been through. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And well, that's part of the challenge as well, is like, I think the South Node shows up when you are trying to pursue something new and pursue something greater and like step things up a notch, basically. It's like the South Node is what happens if you get afraid, if you get scared, you let fear take over, or if something seems like too much, it's what you revert back to. It's like a backward step. You're like, okay, you know what? That was way too much. Like I tried that, it didn't work. I'm just going to go back to like what I know.
Yeah, like it's almost like a safe zone.
Right. And that's where the South Node is. It doesn't mean it's bad. Like you need those things, and those things can be healthy and they can be integrated into your life and into your path. But it's often what you go back to when you've been confronted with something that seems too big to experience or seems too big to integrate to you. Because again, we're talking about extremes. We're talking about the North Node, leap of faith, something where you're like, I'm doing it, I'm going for it. That's North Node stuff. But when you're like, you run towards that and you reach the edge and then you chicken out and you're like, nope, I'm going back. That's when you go to the South Node. What is that for you? How does that feel for you? It feels so much part of your body and part of you that, like, you're right, it's sometimes hard to recognize, but it's what you revert back to. And so you need to look for clues in the sign placement for sure.
Oh yeah.
To see like where that is, and the house placement as well. But yeah, what you revert back to.
So then if this is the North Node, this is the South Node, I think we're in agreement with that. Let's start talking the juicy stuff. What do you think the North Node in Cancer is going to feel like, or do, or be, or how do you really think that's going to shift, especially coming from the North Node in Leo with the dramatic eclipses, the retrogrades and everything else, and we have like the Great American Solar Eclipse, like it moving from that energy to Cancer? What do you think that really, I guess, looks like?
First of all, can we all celebrate that the nodes are not going to be in Cancer, or I'm sorry, Leo and Aquarius? Thank you, Jesus.
No,
oh my God, I'm so happy. It's been a very long 18 months. I don't know if any of y'all have signs rising, but like I do, and I'm done. We're done. It's over. It's done. Thank you. So anyways, it's going to be a big shift because, okay, so first of all, where the nodes go, the eclipses go. So the eclipses have been in Leo and Aquarius. And the reason I bring that up, eclipses are always important. They're always very important.
They're exclamation points on everything.
What?
They're basically exclamation points on everything.
Yes, absolutely. And like the eclipses have been in the sign of Leo, which is the sign of the sun, which is one of the things getting eclipsed. Like literally the sun is one of the things getting like blacked out by these eclipses. So it's even more intense. So what's interesting is we're shifting from the sun being eclipsed in its sign of rulership to the moon being eclipsed in her sign of rulership. So it's a big shift in that direction. But as far as like practically the North Node shifting into Cancer, let's talk about that. So where the North Node goes, you get this exaggeration, this amplification in a way. I talked about this on Twitter over the summer, and I was like mildly proud of myself because I just think it really resonated. But it's like where the South Node is, it's kind of like, fuck that. And where the North Node is, it's like, I'm doing this.
Yes.
That polarity is shifting from Leo, I'm doing this, Aquarius, screw that, to Cancer, Capricorn. So it's like now you're like, I'm doing Cancer things. I'm doing it. I'm committed to that. That is where my energy is going. So with the North Node there, any planet that transits Cancer is going to get that North Node amplification while it's there. So anything Cancer in your chart, whether that's by house or if you have planets there, is going to get boosted, amplified, emphasized, magnified majorly.
Yeah.
And so that means like the feels, basically. Like if you have a problem with feeling your emotions, you need to find a really good support group, because you're going to feel a lot of them, and it's good, it's needed, but it's going to feel like those waters are really swelling inside us, and you can't ignore them anymore. It's going to, like, things are going to overflow basically with the waters of Cancer here, with all those feels, all the stuff you have around nurturing, being nurtured, any kind of like mommy issues, to be totally honest, anything like that.
Trust is a big one that I always like to use for Cancer too. Protection of those like very intimate, specific things. I think it's going to be really interesting that the North, being that it's the North Node, you know, where we're kind of wanting to go and we're wanting to pursue. I think it's just going to be an interesting manifestation that we're in a general consensus, really looking at wanting to pursue more of that relation, more of that trust, more emphasizing like an exclamation point on emotion, on relation, on putting everything together. Because I feel like, you know, I still think it's weird that the Cancer is associated with the crab, but I also, it's like it really is the perfect thing for it. It's like super protective, but on the inside it's soft, it's, you know, it's edible, it's chewy, it's gooey, whatever it is. And I think with the North Node being in Cancer, us wanting to go towards shelling that, protecting that, wanting to water that is a good example of kind of like having like a plant that you want to see grow and you want to see flourish. You have to protect and you have to nurture it. So I totally agree. I think the North Node being right there is just going to totally draw us in that direction on, I like to use the term like a tidal level, like a big wave kind of coming in, you know, like when the waves gets bigger and bigger and it sucks you and feel, it's going to be like that energy a lot. What I did want to ask though is that if that's what the North Node is going to look like in Cancer, what do you think the South Node is going to look like in Capricorn?
Oh man.
That's a tough question, I know.
well, it's heavy, you know, it's heavy. Stuff in Capricorn tends to be heavier, it's denser. Capricorn is an earth sign, it's a Saturn ruled sign. It's all about stuff that like has weight to it, you know, the real stuff, the real shit, if you will. Not that nothing else is real, but Capricorn's really, really real. Yeah. So when the South Node is there, so we've talked a little bit about the North Node in Cancer moving towards that nurturing, that protective energy, that emotional energy, that emphasis on why that's important and why you need it and why you should be focused on it. You know, in contrast, the South Node is going to be moving through Capricorn. It's just going to be like, you have all these structures in life, you have all these rules, you have all this authority, you have all these things that people have told you you must do to be a person, to be an adult.
You've had a set of rules almost.
Yeah. It's like, these are the rules and this is how they work. And the South Node going through Capricorn is kind of just like, all right, some of these rules were done. They need to be burned to the ground. They need to be like completely, you know, torn down, kind of what's the word I'm looking for, like disassembled into their constituent parts and made into something different. So it's like, what are you taking apart in that part of your life? What are you really letting go of? What are you kind of like demolishing, so you can look at you know, what's left after you do that and say, what's good in this? What can I take from this? And what do I really want to sweep away and make room for something new? So it's like, what are these what's your relationship with authority? Number one. What's your relationship with structure and rules? Number two.
Yes.
What is your relationship to all, because Cancer is about relationship. We all know that. We all know it's about nurturing, emotion, connection. Capricorn is a polarity point to that. So it's like, what's your relationship to these authority figures and these, you know, these authority structures, and how can you disassemble that and, you know, break it down, completely break it down. The South Node will break everything down until you have to rebuild it yourself. And that's the beauty of it, but it's not easy. So I think we're all going to be facing basically like, you know, it's time to basically flush some stuff like completely out of our lives.
Yeah.
And it's going to be around authority and around the rules. And it's like, how do we do that in a way that's going to support us moving forward and building something new that's better?
Well, and that's what I wanted to bring up is with the South Node being what we've already learned, what we've already came with, how do you think we're going to be able to integrate that with, okay, like we're stepping away from this idea of structure. We're stepping away from this idea of how things are supposed to be. And we're going towards an area where we want to be more protective. We want to heal. We want to have more trust. We want to have more empathy and relate. How can we utilize the South Node in Capricorn? Like, what is that lesson of this is what we know how to do, this is what we came with type of idea?
Well, I think especially with Cancer being a part of it as that polarity point, I think a lot of it is like, okay, many of us know what it's like to be oppressed and know what it's like to be unfairly judged. And that doesn't make any of that right or good. But knowing how these systems work gives us a tool to exist within them and work it to our favor. And in the world we live in right now, I think that's really important to know how to use our tools. So we don't like the way the tools are being used right now. They're being used in a lot of situations in the completely wrong way. And it's really harming a lot of people and a lot of groups of people. But knowing how those tools work and how this authority system works gives us, I think this is where we can use it to our advantage or find something good in the difficult parts of this, is like, but we know the system, we've learned the system. So know that and know what parts of that system need to go, like they need to go permanently, and know what parts you can keep, and then rebuild the parts that you eliminated. And that goes for like globally, that goes for societally, even just personally. If you grew up, like, let's have like a really basic example. If your family was like really, really strict and your parents never let you do anything, and it really kind of like restricted your expression growing up and all that stuff, and like it really kind of like made you rubber band, and then like you went the total opposite direction, like this South Node and Capricorn stuff is going to show you and emphasize all the things that your parents did wrong. The ways they didn't support you, but it's going to show you the systems that they tried to use, so you can look at those systems and say, I know how to improve them. I know how to make these systems be a support to people. Because it's not that Capricorn things are bad. They're good and bad. So let's find the good parts, knowing which parts are bad. And that's the contrast that the nodes show us as well.
I think that reminded me of, I wish I knew the guy's name, but there was a basketball player, I believe on the LA Lakers, like back in the 90s, who I can't remember his name, so I'm not going to even try to guess it. But he was a basketball player on the Lakers, and he wasn't ever really that good. Like, he wasn't anything that crazy, but he actually retired and became the coach of a basketball team and, like, brought him to, like, these huge, achievements in basketball. It's kind of like, okay, maybe you're not the best at playing this game. Fill a spot where you're needed and utilize what you already know to create that success.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like, use your experience, whether good or bad, to create a fuller understanding of the circumstances in whatever that area of life is, or whatever, part of life you're dealing with, and use that to create your success. Those are your building blocks. You may have to rearrange them, but that's what the South Node is for.
Yeah.
It's for being like, nope, don't need this. This is what's left, and this is what I build on.
That's a good point. Okay, so now that we've talked about the North Node and the South Node being and where they're going to be, how do you think the major planets that are going to be involved or aspecting this are really going to be playing out? Because, I mean, we were just looking at it before we started this. Really, besides Venus going over Cancer during that one point in the eclipse, really, I feel like a lot of it is Saturn and Pluto on top of the South Node. And we're not going to be going too much into the whole, Saturn-Pluto doomscope thing, but I did want to talk about Saturn and Pluto and what that looks like, I guess, on a personal level, because I know it's funny because we're both super young astrologers, so we haven't been through a Saturn-Pluto conjunction, but I believe that this one is going to be really interesting, because usually with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, we see a lot of things dealing with power. You see a lot of things dealing with destabilization, things kind of resetting. It was like Oh, when was the last Saturn Pluto conjunction?
It was like early 80s. It was like 81, 82, I believe.
Yeah, and that was in Libra, right? Like the
Yeah.
whole, and that was like a lot with equal rights and stuff like that. Kind of setting a new tone and stuff like that. But on a personal level, when it comes to Capricorn, where we're talking about just, I guess, on a zodiacal level, Capricorn is, symbolic of structure. Like I like to use the example of Sagittarius is kind of like Lewis and Clark going, on the Oregon Trail, going all the way to Oregon. Capricorn is kind of like the government going in over that to kind of establish some new places for people to live and have an economy and things like that. With Saturn and Pluto going in there with that on top of the South Node, what do you really think that's going to look like, I guess, on a more personal level? Because I think, it's kind of like it's kind of like very blatant when it's talking about like what's kind of going on in what's the word I'm looking for, mundane sense. But on a personal level, I feel like a Saturn Pluto conjunction with the South Node is a very hard chord to get right. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is. And yeah, I mean, like deep sigh. Like we've all, okay, let's just get this out of the way. We've all heard the doom scopes. Like the entire economy is going to crash. Like the entire world's going to like catch on fire and like just we're all headed straight for the underworld. Like,
but like every other YouTuber, I'll ask the question, what does that mean for me?
Because honestly, I'm not a government official and I'm not a CEO of a giant company and I don't run half the world. So like, I'm just a human being. So what does that mean for us? I mean, I think I think like if you break down the symbolism of each point that we're talking about, so like Saturn, rules, limits, structure,
Constricts.
yeah, constraints, delays, kind of these more traditional words. Saturn is not about expanding like Jupiter and like growing and seeking, but like Saturn is about contracting and like compacting. And Saturn's a very dry planet. Saturn doesn't want to reach and connect. Saturn wants to establish and like create like a little cube where it's like, this is what I know and this is what works. And Pluto is like, so, Pluto, god of the underworld, we all know a lot of very intense Pluto keywords, but they're, in my experience, quite true. Pluto is very transformative, as much as I cringe at the word. Pluto really does like kind of burn things alchemically until they're just the elements that they began as before they were even a thing. And it's really something where Pluto kind of breaks things down and forces them to regenerate themselves until there's something new. It's about death, like it's really a death, and then it's a rebirth. And it's a beautiful process, but it's not quick and it's not easy. And it is like if you don't know how to delay gratification, Pluto is going to feel very distressing to you. Do you know what I mean? Same with Saturn. So like these are longer processes. These are deeper processes. And the South Node just adds like this whole idea of like, all right, what are you letting go of? Like the South Node is not only what you brought with you natally, that's a good natal kind of keyword for that, but the South Node transiting, I find really is that like screw that energy where it's just like, I'm letting this go, or this is being taken away from me. So when you combine all those things, the South Node taking something away, probably something necessary to take away, Pluto teaching you the process of death so you can be reborn or something can be reborn, and Saturn teaching you delayed gratification and constriction and kind of consolidation. What you get is wherever Capricorn is in your chart, you're going to be undergoing some major shifts that involve letting something go completely, maybe with a little bit of something that could feel like distress if you're not fully prepared, which few of us are in life, sure. For some things, I mean, you can't be fully prepared for anything. Yeah, I mean, we're astrologers. Are we prepared for everything, Cam?
No, we just know what's happening. That's the worst part.
No, and we're still not prepared. I'm like, oh.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I really like using the symbology of, so I'm from Southern California, and every summer, all of Southern California is on fire. Like, it's every summer, every mountain, everywhere, it's all on fire. It all dies. It all gets burned. Everything. But then you have the rains come in. Well, when California isn't in a drought, and you have the rains come in, you have all this soil getting turned up, then you have all these mudslides in it, but it's creating new land. It's creating so much more life to be brought into the actual, but it just has to be destroyed first in order to get there. It's kind of like a volcano going up. But using Saturn, a Saturn analogy, it's kind of like I see it as getting all of your belongings that no longer work, that you can't like just settle on anymore, that you can't just use as a safety net, getting all of it, putting it in one tight space and letting it on fire. Like not setting everything, don't set it on fire while it's in your home, but taking it out of your home, putting it in the yard or something like that, putting it in a little box and setting that on fire.
Please take it outside your home first.
Don't light it. Oh, don't light.
For the love of God.
Don't let go of your stuff just by lighting your home on fire. Don't do that. This is the North Node in Cancer. We want to stay at home. We want our home to be nicer. We want, no, that was really good. I really actually totally agree with that. So with Saturn and Pluto being over the South Node, there's nothing really going on over the North Node, correct? Like we just saw Venus, and besides the Mercury retrograde, like later on, like not even all too much. How do you think that?
Yeah.
I mean,
there's Cancer season. Like there are going to be planets rolling through Cancer, like, and you're just going to they're going to be North Noded, basically.
Yeah, totally. Like
more of that.
Like googly eyed.
Yes.
Now, what do you think the North Node, like, I guess, what would you really see with all that South Node energy? Because we are talking about a lot of letting go, regardless if we want to or not. And with the North Node and being Cancer, what tips would you really have as like as far as you, I guess, how are you going to really implement this into, I guess, your life? What does letting go of that South Node stuff and moving towards that North Node stuff look for you? And you don't have to get like specific into houses or anything, but like, I just know that for me, for example, the South Node is so like, it's very treacherous. It's very much coming. It's like a storm that you know is going to be coming, and you know everyone's franticing to go to the supermarket to get water and food and everything like that. And I feel as if with Saturn and Pluto, like if it was just Saturn, that's one thing, but with Pluto, I feel like this is going to be quite a revelation. I like Pluto and revelation. I feel like are very synonymous. And this North Node in Cancer is very much wanting us to do what we need anyway, regardless of how emotionally hard it could be to let go of those certain things. And I guess what I wanted to ask was, how are you going to be playing with that? What does that kind of look like, I guess, to you? Like if you were going to, it's kind of like when you say the astrology versus like, okay, this is like what I actually really think. Like, what do you really think about this?
Yeah, first of all, I love that. Really good thoughts there. Yeah, so I think on a really real level, just like on a person-to-person level, like Capricorn also has a lot to do with like expectations, like societal expectations and expectations you put on yourself. Like Saturn is heavy shit. Capricorn is like a Saturn sign. So it's like the expectations and like the discipline that you expect of yourself and all that stuff. And so with the South Node there and the North Node in Cancer, it's like, how can you let go of some of these like expectations and move towards like, how does it feel? What does your intuition tell you? What does your body tell you? Like, how does it feel in your body? Because you can think all you want, you can have all the plans in the world, but when it comes down to it and the earth is shaking underneath you and your life is completely, upheaved, Uranus is going to be in Taurus.
Yeah, I was just about to say Uranus.
So like we're dealing with that too. That's auxiliary to the conversation. But like when the earth is shaking and you suddenly like your bank accounts don't matter anymore, you just have to survive for a minute. What do? You drop lower. Your center of gravity drops. You trust your body. You trust your feet. You trust how when the earth moves, you know how to move too. And that's very Cancer. I know that's very physical, what I'm talking about, but the moon has so much to do not only with the emotions, but the instincts and the responses and the body. So it's like, how can we move from our expectations, our big grand plans, the things that our parents expect of us, our bosses expect of us, what society expects.
What we expect of ourselves.
And what we expect of ourselves, exactly, into what we are feeling now, the present. because that is something we can trust more. And I think the North Node has a lot to do with trust. And it's like, how can we sink into that and trust that more and be in the body and be in the heart? Because that is maybe, dare I say, more reliable than our Capricorn stuff, especially right now. And I think that's the lesson we're all going to be learning.
Yeah, the Capricorn.
So personally, that's what I'm going to do. Because, like, let me just tell you, I'm very type A. Like, I am very type A. I really like having a plan. I really like knowing what's up. I really like knowing what to expect and what I can expect from myself. So I know it's going to be a challenge for me to sink more into this trust and this intuition and this feeling side. But I think there's a lot of value there. And I think a lot of it's really untapped. And I think the North Node being there is going to be a very potent teacher.
No, I completely agree with especially with what you said, how the Capricorn stuff is not reliable right now. Like, ooh, that was especially like with the first part of Saturn and Capricorn. Yeah, sure, there's some stuff there, but as Saturn and Pluto get closer and closer, it's not reliable, and we have to like almost fall back onto our intuition, trust that more, focus more on that. And even though with the South Node being in Capricorn, we're going to want to fall back onto what we know how to do, what's supposed to look like, what it's supposed to work out to be, but going forward and kind of trusting. I really liked what you said about trusting what your body says, because the moon just is so representative of the body. And even though, yeah, it's a little bit more on the physical level, like the moon being so much of that intuition, that's so much of the unconscious. It's kind of like what's present that you don't see, what kind of moves you that you don't. The moon moves the tides, and I'm not making the whole science analogy thing, but the idea of the moon has its phases with the tides. The tide goes up, the tide goes down, and you have to work with that flow rather than trying to fight it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even like, I don't want to get political. That's not my jam. I'm much more on a personal level. But even like, we can't do things the same way our parents did. You know what I mean? Like, we can't do things the same way the baby boomers did. Like, the Saturn stuff isn't working right now. We have to trust ourselves. Like, we have to figure out a new way. And the only way we can do that, it's by, learning from the past, South Node and Capricorn, but it's trusting ourselves to create the future. And the way we do that is trusting how we feel, because how we feel matters more and in a different way than it used to. Because we're all functioning in a different way. So we have to create that trust, and we have to create that connection and that community, and we have to work together to do so. So like, it's macro level and it's micro level. So it's like, you got to trust yourself, your own heart, your own body. And it's like, and we have to work together and trust each other, and we can't do it the old way. Like, it's all the same, really.
Yeah, well, that's the North Node and the South Node anyway. It's so much like macro and micro. Like, the biggest thing I saw with the North Node and Leo, it was like everything was so loud. Like, it was just like yelling for like a year and a half. Like, everyone's like, ah! And I'm like, okay. But as the North Node is moving into Cancer, I really want to hit on the idea of protection, of like the idea that keep what matters to you close by. Don't hold on a lot of it. Like the moon, I stargaze like literally every single night. And have you ever watched the moon transit the ecliptic? It's everywhere. The moon could be literally one place or the other. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
And I feel like with the North Node being, that direction we want to head in, it's kind of like having to follow the path of the moon. It's not going to be an order or a schedule of events. It's going to be very much wishy-washy, go with the flow. If the tide's low, jump in. If the tide's high, jump out type stuff. So no, I really, I super agree with everything that you said. It was really, really good. So I think it's time we go into eclipses.
Let's do this.
Okay, let's go into the eclipses. We're doing this, guys. Hold up. Boom. Share. Okay. Hold on, my mouse is a little bit not working. There we go. All right. So this is the first eclipse. What do you think?
January 5th, right?
Yeah, this is January 5th, 2019. This is the partial solar eclipse. We were discussing this before. I'm sorry. Jupiter and Sag, Mars and Aries, they're way too happy. I feel like this, even though it is a partial solar eclipse, like I think the themes of the Capricorn Cancer stuff are going to basically be very evident, but Jupiter and Mars are basically like, that's okay, we can do that, and want to tackle it all on.
Yeah, so I mean, this is whether or not it's going to usher in like major eclipses. I don't know. Probably not. That's not typically how eclipses work all the time, anyways. And we do have like this amazing Jupiter, this amazing Mars, who is not in Aquarius. Thank you. Oh my God, I'm so excited. But yeah, I think this is going to be a preview, a kind of a taste of these themes of the nodes in Cancer Capricorn and the eclipses in Cancer Capricorn. Because that's really like the highlight event of the nodes being in a sign or the eclipses, right? So I
Yeah.
think this is going to be a preview of like what you can expect about like what you can expect from the themes of this axis being activated in your chart personally. So just pay attention to what goes on at this time. You'll probably be feeling really, really great. Wherever Jupiter and Sag is in your chart, you're probably going to be like
Yeah,
on
no,
cloud nine.
the
Thank you,
beginning
God.
of the beginning of 2019 is just way too good for this eclipse to even mess up. Like, it's just no. Like, this is
Right.
Jupiter's time and Mars's time and Venus's time.
Right.
But when we go to the next eclipse, when we go to January 20th, 2019, this is the total lunar eclipse. Okay, I will say it when we're talking about this eclipse, because it is going to be technically in Aquarius in Leo. I feel like when this is going to be like this is how things are going to this is how things are supposed to develop. This is where things are going. This is where I need to be going. But that moon, because it's going to be the moon in Leo with the North Node in Cancer, it's kind of like, I know where I need to raise my voice up, and I know where I need to have the confidence in order to move forward with that.
Yeah.
Versus, and I mean, the Venus-Jupiter conjunction's like on the same day too. Like, this is kind of having a lot of faith, but I also see this as kind of like a Cancer and Capricorn are very quiet, but the moon in Leo and sun in Aquarius are very not quiet. So I think that's going to kind of be like, it's kind of like yelling in a library in a sense, where it's going to cause a bigger uproar than it should have been. More than like, if you're yelling in a public space, it's not a big deal. Yelling in a library is a really big deal.
Yeah, beautiful. I also think that like this is important because yeah, the nodes have shifted into Cancer Capricorn at this point, but this is really the very final end of the Leo Aquarius eclipses. Like, this is the end. So anything that was like, I don't know about y'all, but like I had like quite an eclipse season in August. I mean, over the whole 18-month period of Leo Aquarius was a thing, but especially in August, it was nearing the end of this series and these themes. This is the very last of the last. And the nodes have already shifted. We are already shifting our focus with that node shift. And we have this beautiful Jupiter-Venus conjunction. It's trine Mars in Aries. Jupiter is in rulership. Like, there's so much to bolster us. It's like the final thing where we're like, and you know what? That's the last thing I have to say about that. And I know I'm right because I know it in my heart.
Yeah.
Like, that's the final Leo eclipse, is like, I know this because I've been through the trial by fire, and I don't even have to fight you because you're already defeated. And I already know, and so do you, but I'm saying it. That's how this eclipse feels to me.
Oh, oh my God, that was like butter on bread. That was amazing. Okay, that sounds, I'm fine with leaving that on that.
Okay.
Next up, on July 2nd, 2019, we have this fun eclipse. Okay, this is also the total solar eclipse, where the focus is on the sun, not on the moon. In my opinion, I think this is going to be when we made the analogy of kind of taking all the stuff you don't need away and burning it. It's kind of like that. If you've ever watched the show Hoarders, the hoarder never wants to throw out their stuff. And it's like the guys have to be like, well, we're throwing it away anyway. And I feel like that's going to be a part of this process. But this eclipse is kind of focusing on it's okay. Like, this process is okay, where even though things are starting to get very restrictive, I like to make the fact that, or make the say basically that Mercury's going to retrograde right after this. This is going to be relearning things, revisiting things, and I really just think that this is going to focus on like, hey, like, this may be difficult, but this is the direction you need to go in. This is what's right for you.
Yeah. Yeah, this is when like the whole eclipse thing like really heats up, in my opinion. I say heats up. It's not fire signs, it's not hot signs at all. It's like very cold and
The
very,
flood.
yeah. This is when the flood really happens. So that first eclipse that we looked at first, January 5th, that's kind of like a preview, like a little taste. This is when it really like kicks into high gear, and like the themes of Cancer, Capricorn, whatever those are panning out to be in your life, you're gonna really start to feel them at this time, at this point in the summer, basically. Because yeah, it's a new moon eclipse in Cancer, and it's exactly opposite Saturn. Saturn is exactly on the south node. It's like, okay, you know exactly what is falling away in your life. You know exactly what you don't want about the Capricorn stuff, and you're trying to plant that seed in Cancer. You're trying to know exactly what to nourish, exactly what to put your energy and your feeling and your heart into, like your real heart and soul into. And it's hard to know how to do that because it feels very vulnerable. I think this is going to feel like a very vulnerable kind of eclipse. Like, I have to leave this behind because I know that this is what I need,
It's
but
like
it
a
feels dangerous still. It's still going to feel dangerous, but you're going to know you have to do it.
yeah, it's like a crab moving shells. Like, that's
Yes,
the one moment
exactly.
in their whole entire life where they're the most vulnerable. They're the most, apt to, being eaten. But in order to grow, in order to fill in that space, they've already grown so much. They need a new shell to fill that space. It's time to go that way. Oh, beautiful.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, moving on to this guy. This is the partial lunar eclipse on July 16th of 2019. This one is kind of like, I guess, in the process of realizing you have to change shells. This is that moment where you're naked and afraid, and like everything is just scaring you. But you have to kind of detach from that and just get to the mission, go where you need to go, and keep fighting that, I guess. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like, all right, so we have a full moon in Capricorn every year. This one happens to be an eclipse, lucky us. But like the moon in Capricorn is not super happy or comfortable. All that vulnerability that we know we feel when we have water sign stuff, it's like the moon embodies that no matter where she is in the zodiac. So when the moon is conjunct Pluto and Saturn and the south node and being eclipsed and it's a full moon, it's like you get that vulnerability and that like feeling of just like, listen, I don't have anything left. Like, I have nothing left. I'm just here, and it's just I'm giving all of it to this process, and that's all I have to give. And if it's not enough, it's not. And if it is enough, that's great. But like, this is all I have to give. It's like really bearing everything and just being, and like really letting go. Like
Really,
before we hit the record button, you use the word surrender. And I think that was a really perfect word for this, is just like, there's stuff that's like, it's not like, oh, I don't need that thing that like my dad told me when I was like 12 and like it really scarred me and like I'm letting go of that. It's like, it's not something like that. It's something where it's like, it's like ripping off the band-aid like slowly. That's what I feel like this eclipse is. It's like it hurts and you have to let something go, and it's not something flippant. It's like something really important, but like it's really the falling away of that completely, and there's no choice really to do anything but surrender to that process.
yeah, it's kind of like, I guess what I was thinking of is that the Moon Pluto Saturn thing. I can't think of a specific movie besides The Hills Have Eyes, if you've ever seen that. Um, okay, so think of any scary, horrible movie where the main character is just so fucked up by the end, where it is just like, whatever goes. Like, I'm here to fight. I'm here to do it, but like nothing can phase me past what I've been phased. Because like, and yeah, if you watch The Hills of Eyes, you know how horrible that movie is. And the dude at the end is just so. He's so. It's not like, I mean, yeah, in this case, he's very traumatized, but he's just so, nothing can phase him past that. And it's like allowing that vulnerability to happen, to being like, I have gone through this. This is where I'm at. There's so much. There's no more I can give. There's no more I can be. This is what it has to look like. You know what I mean?
Yeah, It's like freaking Frodo on like the side of Mount Doom, and he's like starving and like dying of thirst, and he just like he's like walking up like dragging himself like up the side of Mount Doom because it's just like I have to. I've been through literally everything.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Moving forward, because I really like where we ended with that. This is next. This is the annular solar eclipse. This is on December 26th. This looks happy. This looks like we got to the mountaintop, or basically we found hope, and it's kind of like, it's not like, a 5-star gourmet meal and, fresh Fiji water, but it's, it's on the up and up. Jupiter's going to be right on the south node. Sun's going to be there, just starting that fresh Jupiter Sun cycle. I really feel like this is going to, and especially with the trine to Uranus, I feel like this is going to kind of give us a quick, sporadic way to get out of the situation, to kind of use that situation, the south node stuff. This is kind of like going back over what we learned in the process and how we can use that moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. I think those are really, really good thoughts, because like that, we used all those like doomy images for the last eclipse, and like I'm sure it won't be easy and it won't be super fun. But the thing is, like, all the South Node stuff, all the Capricorn stuff, I think this eclipse really points to what all that's about going forward, because there is always a forward. We're not here forever.
Yeah.
And Jupiter is bestowing on us kind of like, it's like this dude walks up to this, this land where, like, I don't know if anybody's familiar with like, I'm not super familiar with this myself, but like bush burning in Australia, like how they burn the bush, and that's like how they keep the land under control, and like they do that, like have such a deep understanding, a soulful understanding of how to work the land in that way. It's like someone showing up after all that has been burned away, it's been burned down and it's barren, and we're like, what do we do with this now? Jupiter's like, I have the seeds. Here we go. Let's just plant these. We're going to plant these seeds. We've got all this new land. We've got all this ash fertilizing the ground. Let's plant this stuff. And then Uranus is there trining. I didn't even notice that when we were looking at this earlier, but like, yeah, that's wonderful. Because like all this stuff breaking down, like it's making space for something new and better, something way better, generationally better. And it's going to take a lot of loss and a lot of trauma, but there is some newness. And I really love that Jupiter's here for this eclipse right here on the south node, saying, like this emptiness, this space that's been created, this loss, we're going to fill it with something better.
Yeah. It's kind of like, those really dark memes that are like, we will rebuild. Like, that's Jupiter.
Yeah.
We will rebuild.
Especially in Capricorn, it's like, we will rebuild.
We will rebuild. Yeah. So then the last eclipse that we got going on really is this one. And this is, I really want to bring up the analogy I used earlier. Serving papers. This is kind of like with Saturn and Pluto on top of each other. Mercury's right there. The sun's right there. It's a penumbral eclipse. Did I say that right?
You did. Good job.
Okay, good. So it's not the biggest thing, but with the moon being in Cancer right there, this is that full moon. It's, full moon in Cancer, just like, where she wants to be. It's kind of like that feeling that, I guess if we're going to make a very stereotypical analogy, like I love to do, like the idea of like a woman who's sick of her husband and is serving the papers and is finally feeling herself and is, I'm going to do this for me. And this is what I think. I'm finally closing off that door. I'm finally expressing that, communicating that, making that clear. You know what I mean? It's kind of like drawing those lines while also feeling very much called to the specific direction of where you're wanting to go.
Yeah, it's super interesting because it's like we've got this pile up in Capricorn because it's Cap season and everything's in Capricorn, including Jupiter. Lucky us. But like, it's like Jupiter's there, the sun's there, Mercury's there, Saturn's there, Pluto's there. And then the moon is like, all the way in Cancer, being like, hey, remember all that Cancer stuff? Remember like the North Node in Cancer and like all that stuff it's been teaching you? Yeah, still a thing. So figure that out.
And I just feel like with Jupiter, I mean, it is going to be Jupiter's fall, and he's kind of back in the picture a little bit on this one. But I just think with Mercury there, it's going to be very much like, because the moon at this point during the actual opposition, Mercury's going to be literally right on top of it.
That Mercury is Cazimi, dude.
Mercury is Cazimi. He's flying forward in this case. Like, I really think this is understanding the big picture of this. And even though Cancer, Capricorn, like literally no planet is even in a Mercury sign, Mercury in Capricorn is kind of like, it's just a boring message. It's like a email. Like, it's like a regular email. It's very not painted, in my opinion. But Mercury in Capricorn is very straightforward. It is very not politically correct, but I guess format style. Like, it's a very much professional setting. It's very much like in a higher, it's kind of like the difference between someone who works in like the service industry or the corporate industry. Both.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And like Mercury in Capricorn is like really good at shit like drawing blueprints, like very accurate blueprints. It's like, oh, you want to build a building? Well, you need an architect. I'm your guy. And like Saturn's like, this is these are like all the requirements we need. And Mercury's like, like beep boop boop, and then like it's done. And there's this like beautiful blueprint, and it's like no one could have done that but Mercury, because that's Mercury's skill. And like this is Mercury. Like, so the moon's at 19. Yeah, this is the exact. Okay, so like Mercury's Cazimi during this eclipse. It's penumbral, yes, granted. But it's like when Mercury is Cazimi, we can get like a message that we couldn't get otherwise. And it's going to be very dry, very Capricorn, very like, you
Plutonic.
Know, the mundane email. But it's going to be like that key part of the blueprint. It's like, oh my God, that's it. That's it. You know, and then the moon's going to be highlighting it, just, you know.
Yeah, bringing it to life. And I just think with Pluto there, it's going to be that, not necessarily the breakthrough moment, but this is something new. This is creating something different. This is something that's never been done before.
It's like, is this like way too nerdy to say? It's like you finally found like the hidden key to like explode the Death Star that someone hid.
Those like
you know what I'm talking
about? Yeah,
like you find, anyways, I'm not like a super Star Wars fan, but like that's what it reminds me of. It's like, all right, it's Mercury and Capricorn. Like this person's definitely like an engineer on the Death Star. Like if that's not Mercury and Capricorn, I don't know what it is.
Engineer on the Death Star. Mercury, Pluto, Saturn, and Capricorn. Good God. I'm an engineer on the Death Star, but yeah.
Anyways.
No. Yeah, I just think the moon is just going to be bringing all of that to life. It's kind of like, rather than just kind of like, you know, again, like serving the papers or writing the thing, it's going to make this a way bigger deal than like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a key point, and we're going to find it at this point, yeah.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I guess that's basically everything we wanted to touch on. Let me do this real quick. So I guess what are your final thoughts? Jerry's final thoughts. What do you think? All in all.
Oh, my final thoughts. I mean, like, I'm really excited for this season. I'm really excited for the nodes to be in different signs, just because, you know, for personal reasons, because like it's been only 8 months, let's be real. But I'm excited to see what this ushers in, because the North Node in Leo, I feel like it brought a lot of emphasis onto the self and personhood and like who we are and what we perform and what we show to the world. And I'm interested to see what that North Node energy looks like when it moves into a sign like Cancer, where it is more about dropping into the body and into the heart and into the feelings, especially after all we've been through just collectively with these Leo eclipses, really having, you know, that big kind of upheaval. And so I'm excited to see what this brings as far as the breakdown of the structures and the trust and vulnerability and the gifts that those things bring to all of us. So I don't know. I'm super for it. I'm super here for it. Like, and on some level, I'm an astrologer. Yes, whatever. I do this for a living. But like, I'm a human too. And I'm just excited to be here for it. Like, I'm here for the ride also.
Oh yeah,
I'm always learning. Like, I'm always experiencing. So
yeah, and you know me, like I'm a chaotic neutral. Anything crazy, I'm here for it. And I think what's exciting about this though is that We haven't had anything like in a water sign besides like Saturn in Scorpio and like Jupiter in Scorpio for a minute. Like this is gonna be so. It's kind of like okay. It's a hot day, and you just go to the fridge. You just pull out that water bottle, and you just drink it, and it's just this moment of bliss. It's gonna be so refreshing, so like hydrating in a sense. And I don't think we're really going to in the moment. I think it may be intense, but I think as we move forward, when God, forbid I say it, but the nodes move to Sag and Gemini, by the time, yeah, I know, that scares me too. But by the time we get there, I feel like we're going to feel so much more hydrated. We're going to feel so much more. It's kind of like after, water literally cures everything. Like it's 80% of your body. And I feel like this is all something that we really need. But yeah, cool. Do you have anything else to say? I think I'm good on that. I think we really went into it super deep. And I know we were like, let's keep this like a half an hour, or it's like been an hour.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh my gosh. We all know that like put two of us in a room and we can talk for like 24 hours straight.
we could talk for a very long time.
Yes.
So,
no, I feel like we covered a lot of really good stuff. And if anybody has questions or anything, ask them. But we covered a lot.
So do you have a website? Do you have a Twitter? What's your stuff? Tell them.
I do. All my stuff is AmyJo Gleason. So my website is amyjogleason.com. It's AmyJoGleason. That's also my Twitter handle. I know that's like a lot of letters.
Follow her on Twitter.
It's fine. Instagram and Twitter are AmyJo Gleason as well. So you can find me there. I'm also on Facebook if you want to hit me up there.
Well, sweet. Yeah, and you should join the AYA and be one of us. So I guess with that, thank you so much for being here with me and talking about this. I feel a lot better about going into this now that I've discussed it. But I'm sure, with everybody else, comment below, tell us what you think, say whatever you want. But with that being said, I guess we'll wrap this up. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Cam.
All right, take care.
All right, bye.